Hello, my name is Sue Liburd, and for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to try and engage you in a thought experiment. And that thought experiment is, can I get you to agree to participate in creating a positive trophic cascade? And I'll explain what a trophic cascade is very shortly. But allow me first to introduce myself. So as I say, my name is Sue Liburd, and I am the Managing Director of a small change and transformation consultancy called Sage Blue. But I have a portfolio career, so that means I wear a range of other hats. So for example, I sit on the Armed Forces Public Patient Voice Advisory Group. I'm the Deputy Chair and I'm the Ethnic Minority Lead. I also sit on the board of NHS Lincolnshire Clinical Commissioning Group, where I am a non-exec director. And you can see from some of the other logos, those are organisations where I also am actively involved, sitting on their boards or sitting on an advisory board. But in addition to this, I am also an Army veteran. And my career originally started in nursing, so I'm a nurse and midwife as well. And I have a particular interest in health and social care. But when I look at my portfolio, what I can see, and possibly what you can't quite see, is at the heart is my desire and commitment for organisations to really value and respect and enable full potential in terms of their employees. So I'm very, very interested in workplaces. But enough about me, let's get back to our experiment. At the heart of this thought experiment that I want you to undertake today is what I call the power of small. If you fully engage in this experiment that I'm going to propose to you, what you will find is that the smallest thing that you can do may absolutely lead to some huge results. This is what we call marginal gains theory. You see it in high performance sport, for example. Rather than looking to create big shifts and big change, everybody just does something that's small but consistent, small and consistent, and what happens is collectively we bring a cascade of change. So that's what I'm hoping as a result of our time together that we're enabled to do. So point number one, let's start with the thought of hierarchies. Are you aware we live in a world of hierarchies? If you just look around in every aspect of our life, we see hierarchies. So for example, if you are getting on a plane or you're getting on a train, we have first class and we have economy class. We have a hierarchy. When we look at hospitals, we have hierarchies. We have consultants at the top, then we have senior registrars, then we have doctors, then we have nurses and midwives, we have then allied services, so radiography, we have pharmacists, we have lab technicians, we have then healthcare assistants, and in the field obviously of health and social care, we have social care, we have carers of course, which is in part what we're here to talk about today as a group. So one of the things as part of our experiment I want you to think about is, do you have hierarchy bias? And when I say hierarchy bias, what am I talking about? When you look at an organisation or you look at any structure, what you see is that there's a small number at the top, it's a pyramid, and there's a large numbers at the bottom. So for example, if we look at the armed forces, we've got two key components. We have officers and we have other ranks. We have a small number of officers at the top and we have a larger number of other ranks. When we look in the armed forces community, if you just listen to how people talk, we start off with serving personnel, we then talk about reservists, we then talk about veterans. If you can see what I mean about this cascade, we talk about spouses, we then talk about dependents, and then we talk about carers. Now, one of the things about hierarchies is that we assign to the top of a hierarchy greater influence. we assume that their voice or their opinion is better than or more important than or more influential than those voices that are lower down the hierarchy. Of course, that's bonkers. But it's one of the things that when we look at hierarchies, and if we are not careful and we're unconscious to it, we assign inappropriate value and worth. So as part of our thought experiment, we need to look at, do we have a hierarchy bias? So what if we took a leaf out of Mother Nature's book and flipped the switch, moved from hierarchies to ecosystems? So what do I mean by an ecosystem? As it says here on the slide, we're talking about a system, a group of components that together they interact and they are interconnected. I.e., if you take one component out, it will have a completely significant impact on the rest of the ecosystem. And we see that all of the time in nature. So for example, look at it, we've got an image here of a tree. The tree requires sunshine, it requires water, it requires fertile soil, it requires insects, it requires birds to take its seeds from one place to another. So this is a biodiverse ecosystem. So we find ourselves sitting in ecosystems all of the time. But if we move from hierarchy to think about ecosystems, what could possibly be achieved? So as carers when we're talking about the Armed Forces Caring Network, we're significant players in a health ecosystem, health and well-being right at its heart. But we're not just obviously talking about carers. What we're talking about are, as I've said, people who have served, reservists, veterans, dependents, spouses. We're also talking about people who commission health and social care. We're talking also about people who deliver, obviously, the care directly, and we are talking about individuals or organisations that support carers. So that's part of the ecosystem. So as I've already said, there's an interesting aspect which is called trophic cascade. If we take one component out of an ecosystem, it has a significant impact. It can cause that ecosystem to collapse, or certainly to misfire or dysfunction. And I've popped an image here of inner workings of a clock, of a watch actually, and just to kind of reinforce my point. If you take out one of those cogs or you take out one of those screws, what happens is that beautiful timepiece will not be able to work. And we are seeing this in nature all of the time. So for example, if we have no trees on the planet, guess what? We're not going to have any clean air for us to breathe. If we don't have our seas, our oceans, then actually what we're going to have is masses of desert, and then that's going to have an impact in terms of our climate and environmental controls. If we have no birds and we have no bees, then we can't have fertile growth and pollination. So everything is a system. It takes something out, and what happens is it causes a cascade. And we've seen this in nature, whereby we've removed a species or we've put in another species and things have changed in the environment. But we can have positive trophic cascades, and that's what I'm talking about at this particular moment. So here's the key question. What if we had no carers in respect of the armed forces? So somebody who has served has either is serving or has left the service and has gone on in their life to do other things. Every single one of us at some point is going to need to have a carer. We're going to have access to a caring health and social care service. As we know, carers are not just adults. I just want to make sure that we're very clear. Carers can also include children. And we're talking about people who look after family members. We're talking about partners. We're talking about friends. We're talking about People who provide help, of course, to someone in terms of illness, in terms of frailty, in terms of disability, whether they've got a mental health problem, whether they've got an addiction problem. So something at that point in terms of the person that has served as a life whereby they, at this particular time, need some support. So what if we had no armed forces carers? I'm going to leave that one for you to think about. Think about the cascade. Where would that support have to come from? Who would provide that support? What systems may be overrun? What's the impact if we had no carers for the armed forces community? So my key message here for our experiment is, if we want to create a constructive trophic cascade, what are some of the things that we can put in place, every single one of us here at this conference? What are some of the small things that we can do to ensure that the armed forces community continues to receive the support it needs and that it thrives? So I'm encouraging you to start to give some thought that if you are a commissioner of health and social care, that you think about the voices and the opinions of others that you need to hear and to engage with in order to make sure that you are commissioning the best services possible. If you are delivering care directly, it's incumbent on you to speak to providers and to supporter associations to let them know what your needs are, what are the challenges that you may be facing, what it is that you need in place to deliver the best care possible. Your voice matters. If you are an individual or you are an association that is providing support to the carer space, then equally you need to find your voice, and you also need to listen, because you are a champion, but equally you are an influencer in terms of the care that can be provided within our community. So what I'm saying is, every single one of us, our experiment is to take a little look at what we are doing on a day-to-day basis, personally and professionally, to make sure that the voice in our armed forces community is heard and that the opinions of everybody, which matter of course, are brought to the table. So these are some of the things that I do. So just a little mnemonic that I walk around with in my head. So whenever I'm in different settings, I actively use the term trees. It's just one of those little mnemonics, those little triggers. So I take time to notice. So when I'm in the armed forces community, whether that's personally or professionally, because as a veteran myself, and as somebody who volunteers providing support to older military veterans, as well as with my healthcare hats on, I make sure I take time to notice. So I ask questions, I pay greater attention. So I take time to notice. So has this individual that I'm talking to got a support system in place, for example? And if so, is that an effective support system? My second aspect in trees, obviously is the letter R, is I'm respectful at all times. And the reason I remind myself of that is to walk into situations with humility. So some people may be delivering a service or delivering some support in a way that I wouldn't do it, in a way that clearly is working. Who am I to come in with my hat and say, actually, I think it should be done like this, given the roles that I wear? So I'm respectful at all times. The first D in my trees is about inquiry. So I inquire if everything is all right. It's the human condition just to engage on a personal level. And often we don't take the time to ask, is everything all right? And so I make it my business on every single level just to check in with individuals. And my final E is this: is to remember that because we're in an ecosystem and all of the component parts are equal, not less than, therefore not hierarchical, equity is important. So try to give attention and recognition and due acknowledgement to every single aspect of the ecosystem. Does that make sense? And the small s is just to remind me, is there an opportunity here where I can lift some spirits and help people remember to smile? So I work on trees as part of my trophic cascade in terms of the armed forces community and in order to help it thrive and to continue to grow. So to our thought experiment, my ask of you is this. I want you to engage in creating a trophic cascade. And as you go through the conference today, you listen to speakers, as you leave the conference today, you speak with others, you give thought to what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. What small action, remember marginal gains, what small action can you do that will make a difference to the armed forces caring community? Thank you very much.